Bum, 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 bum. Couple more minutes, fellas. We're gonna make this show short, sweet, and sexy. Suppose I can give the disclaimer now. Hi, I'm Kevin Chaos. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a politician, I'm not the smartest person in the world, though I fare pretty well. The following information is just information and shouldn't be taken as your sole go-to piece of advice for medical advice or any other decision-making process. I'm just a dude here to tell a story, my opinion on things, although we do like to include some fun science. Today's topic, we're going to cover the powers of the mind. Bum, 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 bum. I remember, might not do calls this time, but you can text into the show or use the YouTube chat. I'm trying to make this PC enough, despite that it goes against everything that I stand for, fitting in, you know. Going by someone else's rigid codes of standards of what is or is not appropriate, what does or does not but hurt or offend people out there. But we're in the process of some new things, so we'll see what happens. I tried to make it pretty cut and dry because I tend to be elaborate. And one of the reasons for that in these earlier on episodes was to get everybody excited about some of the kind of things we might cover, some of the many branches. So now we got to dial it back a little bit and go a little bit more simple, step by step, and to get everybody oriented, everybody ready, prepared for the new age. It is not powers we fight so much rather than principalities. Psychology. Yee-hoo! Alright, yeah! Alright, folks. What's up, everyone? My name's Kevin Chaos, and welcome to KTV. Whoa! That was not supposed to happen. Welcome to KTV, all Kevin most of the time. I'm Kevin, of course. So today, we're going to discuss, as so often is the broader topic, mind control. How to control yourself, or others should you choose. But we're going to dial it back to being a bit basic to the brain states that you go through throughout each day. Discuss a little bit about each one, and then a couple methods you can use to literally, with or without external tools, be able to implement these things for yourself. You may notice while I speak a lot of the time, for example, that I put my hands in certain ways. And I'm able to, without any notes, most of the time, put on relatively well performances and keep track of so many thoughts. We're going to go into just barely into that because we're going to focus majorly on the brain, but we're going to discuss anchors and different tools that you can use to kind of willingly travel down and tweak that brain. So I'll include a link in the description. Everybody always says that, never does, YouTubers, right? Excuse me, but I most certainly will. Or you can Google Lunar site brainwaves to find this chart, which is basically master chart of charts, citing their resources from the other places that they've pulled. But we'll get that. Alright, so these are not the only ones, I should warn you, but you go through several states of consciousness throughout the day. Now, I've always found it interesting, those who say, I can't be hypnotized, because they're full of, okay? You can and are already, probably multiple times before the moment that you said that, hypnotized all day long, okay? Your brain, especially if you're bipolar, but it's true if you're not, but especially if you're bipolar, is constantly cycling up and down different rhythmic frequencies, okay? These states of consciousness can be observed and recorded. The dominant rhythm, okay, hertz cycles per second. The dominant observable rhythm have been found to have the following qualities. All right. Now we go through, I'm going to put it simple, and then we're going to go through the way that they put it. So, the way that I like to tell it is, we're beta right here, right now. You might be a little bit alpha, depending if you're smoking or not listening. But beta is active, focused, alert. It's when you're in movement, okay? Alpha is just a little bit slower of a wave. It's calm, it's relaxed, it's less stressful, it's more observant, less concerned. Theta is a little bit slower than that. Theta, notice how you're kind of riding with me now as I wind my speech down just the same to a slower wave, and how much easier it is to receive that because of it. Theta is the subconscious, it's lucid dreaming, it's tracing old neural pathways and memories, it's creating new neural pathways and memories. And then beneath that is delta, which is deep, dreamless sleep. For those of us who don't get a lot of sleep, when you think you just dream black and then wake up so suddenly, that's because you didn't dream. You didn't reach theta. You went straight into the deepest part, the recovery, the necessary cycle, above all else, because your body knows pretty much what it's doing. Pretty much. Now here's their chart. Okay, they highlight 5 major waves. Oh, and I left one out. I didn't think they'd mention it on the basic chart, but gamma waves. Gamma waves are the excitatory wave. Gamma waves are in horror movies, for example. That high noise you hear, that's, you wonder like why they have that in the background. Is it that music's just like that for horror movies? No, it's not just the music idea of what horror should be. It's them playing around a lot of time with gamma waves to keep you on the edge of your seat, to keep you anxious, to keep you in that agitated state. Now here's their version. Let's look at the... Oh, there isn't even a source here, but I googled for this and saved it. Unfortunately, I don't have a source. Making waves. The brain wave spectrum divides into 5 bands with different associated states. Delta, deep, unconscious, intuition, and insight. They give some frequencies here. Theta, subconscious, creativity, deep relaxation. Alpha, spacey, I like that description, and dreamy state, receptive and passive. Beta, conscious thought, external focus. Gamma, not well understood but linked to perception and alertness or anxiety, is pretty well understood by those who use it in their tools against and or for others. Dun 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 dun. Alright, we're going to close this out here to keep track with everything going on. Now, we've come far enough, I've made my own little text document here as well to break down the frequencies for those who are interested. And then here's some basic descriptions of those states again. Delta, deep, dreamless sleep, trance, non-rapid eye movement sleep. Theta, the hypnagogic state, however you prefer to pronounce that. Lucid dreaming, meditation, and memory. Beta, dominant, alert, anxious, listening and thinking, information processing. Alpha, the slow wave, creative insight, relaxed yet alert, calmness, dream sleep, and pleasant drifting. Gamma, decision-making in fear situations, muscle tension. And I have here the frequencies, which I'm going to just vaguely speed through so that I know it's captured in this video here. People can screenshot it. With one extra note that isn't written up here, interestingly, epsilon, the lowest measurable wave, seems to have the same effects as lambda, the highest measurable waves in the brain. They seem to do pretty similar things. Full circle. So we have epsilon, that's 0.1, right? So less than a hertz to half a hertz, epsilon. Delta, 0 to roughly 3. Now, people disagree by, I want to say, 4 hertz, where certain ones start and others end. You know, different technical scientists want to say, oh no, for example, gamma doesn't start until 40 hertz, where other people think it starts at 30. It's less important when you just understand the range of what each thing is happening, and you'll see that when you discover in your own time playing around with this chart. But this is the electricity basically running through the brain, and the faster and slow rhythms can be observed during different processes that we're doing, and we can recreate different processes to re-invoke those things. So delta, 0 to 3. Theta, put into 2 classes these days. Low theta, 3 to 5, or 5 to 8 for high theta. Alpha, 8 to 10. 9 to 10 is center. 10 to 12 is high alpha. Beta, 12 to 30, or 36 on alternate charts. Low, medium, high. Gamma, that super rapid wave we talked about. Lambda, the really high one. We've also measured crystals and things like that that go outside the scope of this video, but some of them are included on this chart for those interested in pseudosciences. Alright, so now, why did I give you this numerical chart? Well, you can create something. You can use a tonal generator. Here's a chart of color mapped out to sound. But you can use a tonal generator. There's also other ways you can use electrical stimulus and stuff. There's many mediums recorded, and this chart will also give little credits on where everything comes from, so that you know if you need a medium other than simply audible or inaudible but still existing waves. Now, if playing around with these audio formats, I recommend just getting a little Bluetooth speaker or something. Those really cheap ones, it's a little teeny can, work great because you can place it on particular parts of the body too. The wavelength, the amplitude of the wave is going to be important as well, because you're combating all the rest of the noise in the room if you're not wearing headphones. Originally I was going to make a chart. I did make some things to go over, but I pretty much memorized it. The difference between monaural and binaural waves, for example. A lot of people might look up these kind of things, meditation music or something, on YouTube, and not really even know where to begin. So, first, the description of monaural and binaural beats. This thing needs to fucking behave. But monaural, mono, means one. Iso, one. So isochronic, another term for the same thing. Oh, it shut off on me as soon as I picked the mo up. Anyway, we'll just have to do. Binaural then, bi. Everybody knows what bi means, huh? Bi means two. So monaural beats are beats that you can play that are single toned frequencies usually, or playing one tone at a time. So that as your brain listens to it, I should explain how this works in a second. I'll explain why it works, but with the one tone you could have one speaker or hear it in an external source. With binaural beats you're going to want 2 speakers, and how that works is the difference between the left tone and the right tone is already kind of decided by your brain. So say it's 12 on one side and 4 on the other side, right? So if I have 12 hertz in my right ear and 4 hertz on my left ear, 12 minus 4, 11, 10, 9, 8, it would put me in, what is that, beta? Or is it alpha on these charts? 8 hertz. Past life regression. Cool. Alpha. Okay. So it would put me in alpha. Your brain hears all this excess noise and the dominant blend of it all, if you will. Your brain starts to attune to. Now here's why all of these things actually work and how it's kind of a legitimate science. Nature doesn't like to argue with nature, pretty much. When you hit F sharp, someone's already corrected this in the past, but it's a fun way I like to say it, because it would work with any key, theoretically. But I used to say if you hit F sharp in a room full of pianos on one piano, it'll vibrate F sharp on all the other pianos. And to talk of resonance. But the point is, the vibrations affect one another. So when your brain hears a tone, so to speak, it doesn't necessarily need to be audible, but when it picks up on this wave that it's produced or witnessed before, you know, our brains are incredible fucking machines, then it says, oh, where have I heard this before? Right, and the last time we were doing this when this happened. And it starts to replicate all the surrounding details. And that means the chemistry it was producing at the time, how it was operating. So a skilled speaker or a brain entrainment tonal program, similarly, will lull a person over time to slowly kind of turning that radar to matching that frequency. So like, say, a good song, for example, there's a Psycho Stick song, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Largiliquent Dithyram. Yeah, good luck, Kevin, right? But what's cool about it is it plays this sequence of notes over and over and over and over again, but it slows down. It's really good to listen to quiet for obvious reasons. But as the track goes down, it gets dramatically slower as it goes along, and you just kind of ride comfortably that wave until you're in that slower, more relaxed wave. That's exactly what brainwaves are. That's exactly what the whole purpose of this is right here. So your brain hears a sound, a rhythm it's used to producing. It's done it before, and after, say, 5 or 6 minutes on average for most people, it starts to produce it inwardly. It's not hurting it, so why not? And it just joins in with the rhythm. So binaural is the difference between the two. Now, if you go esoteric, you can find all kinds of interesting stuff. You've got where people do chants, for example, right? Mantras. These are mudras, hand gestures. Mantras are words or sounds of power. Well, isn't it interesting that both our English vowel sounds and a lot of these mantras include these same words even that we're using to describe the main brain states? Remember? Epsilon, right? So we got alpha, beta, theta, right? Omicron, epsilon, iota, omega. 7 sounds, 7 colors, 7 major frequencies. We won't make it all fun and esoteric, but the point is, people have been experimenting with how to recreate that wave and change the personal brain chemistry for a really long time, and trying to talk about it. Color, light, literally the whole world you see around you is more or less an illusion. It's a translation of these waves by our optic nerves, for example, into what we know as sight, into what we know as sound, etc. So you could even tie this into your spiritual chakra systems and whatnot. The musical notes, the colors associated, and the frequency range. Tesla's original patent, interestingly, there's an Android app. Go download it. It's free. It's called Tesla's Patents. If it's still on there, you might have to search Aptoid or an alternate app store. But it shows like how the TV was designed basically to manipulate you through very specific pulses of light. Quite similarly, when the first episode of the Japan animation or anime Pokemon aired, like something like 50-something kids had a seizure, and it was due to the specific frequency pulsing of red and blue tones of light. Those played at the right speed and the right hue were creating adverse effects in children because 100% this does have an effect on people. It's also has an effect on animals and bugs. It's why they use like red lights. You see it in cop movies. They got the like red lights on the inside of the car. It also is because red light won't screw up your circadian rhythm. It'll still allow you to get tired and to wind down. Whereas blue light, like Bluetooth and all this other stuff, which is irrational to use the color blue for that, is pulsing a frequency that will interrupt your 12-on, 12-off cycle, aka circadian rhythm, and mess up your sleep cycle, metabolism, other sorts of things. So these are verifiable. Now that we know we can do it, we're going to discuss a couple of different areas. So we have color therapy, that means, right? Color therapy, proof of color therapy. I think I gave a vague shout out to this in my original long premiere. Is like, for example, in Virginia Beach Community Corrections Jail, the most common jail jumpsuit, because it depends certain crimes in certain areas of the jail for different things, but the most common color jumpsuit is orange. Orange stimulates hot tempers, right? Okay, it's in the chakra system, it would be desire, right? So it keeps people agitated. And the next one would be yellow. Yellow is for violent. Interesting that in the chakra system, yellow would be the ego, right? The solar plexus. And that's the ones you got for the violent offenders. Okay, cool. For the mentally ill or really dense individuals, right? They're wearing brown. Go figure. So, like, to those of us who already had kind of esoteric ways of looking at this stuff, a lot of the sciences that people want to come and talk about these days, and they're finally getting into, or what we tried to talk about in our own languages for thousands of years, that there is a way to tune yourself and others to different things, using light, using sound, and using color. So, those jumpsuits, for example, are a good example. The walls being grays and browns, right? And you don't get to see much else of any other color, dulling the mind. You forget the lyrics to your favorite songs. Yeah, it has an effect on you. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of frequency, wavelength, and vibration. You see this article I have up here. I wasn't going to read through it particularly, but I just wanted to show that there is a scientific consensus. This is coming out of Vital Heart and Vein. Breathing techniques to lower blood pressure. Now this adds just one more tool to control your mind out there. Breath work. Now you know what waves we've been discussing for the past however many minutes, 20. that means the way that you breathe can also create a wave. You can speed up and slow down your breathing. You can speed up and slow down your blood pressure. You can speed up and slow down your thinking. It's pretty uncomfortable the way that I just spoke just then, isn't it? You may notice a yogi, someone who teaches yoga, for example, say, and as your breath slows down, let your mind slow down. I've experimented with this process. Breath work is another legitimate way to control yourself. And if you can control, oh, you couldn't dam the river, if you can slow down that channel, you'll be able to observe a lot more data. You'd be surprised. All the stuff that's going on. I did an experiment in one of those machines. They take your blood pressure in a hospital, and they leave you hooked up to the, and I controlled my breath. Bad idea. Don't recommend it. Don't do this at home unless you want to experience the same discomfort, because since they're not really paying attention to you anyway, you'll see. So I'm breathing slow, long, relaxed breaths, getting that total zen vibe. Allowing the machine, go figure, to try to detect my blood pressure, right? Except for my breath has slowed down, and therefore my heart has dramatically slowed down. And this machine, being automatic, not a person, is looking for a specific baseline. Like, it expects it to be a certain distance or higher. Otherwise, it assumes that you're a skinny mini and it's going to continue to inflate until it detects something. But the metallic bar that surrounds the poof bag that's around your arm is only but so wide. Eventually something's got to give. So as I'm all calm, it goes, they've detected enough, so it keeps going and going and going, but so quickly until I'm like, okay, get this off. Now my blood pressure's raising a little bit, and I'm sure it detects something, but literally there's no room to move. So, point being, it couldn't detect my blood pressure because I'd lowered it so dramatically. So these are very useful techniques. Six breaths. Fascinating. I was thinking of the 666 breath, but I didn't want to bring it outside the scope of this vehicle. Here's that color system again. Roy G. Brev. From the root to the crown. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, ultraviolet. And look at the lower end of what these colors and frequencies do. Now that we've already talked past it anyway, I wonder if it's going to match similar. Orange. Emotions. Anger. Stress. Reds. Tiredness. Fear. See that? Okay, and that's just based off of pH balance colors with this stuff, but interesting that everything always seems to fit. Emotions. The sacral, desire, feelings. Okay? That's pretty crazy. This I decided to include, I could have put one up for every chakra, but that's not the scope of this video. The point is to show that there are so many systems to utilize, for example, the somasensory cortex and the sense of smell, which is yet another frequency vibrating into your brain. So we have the power of words and affirmations, and if taken to the study of those senses, the vowel sounds, the color of sounds, and taken to an extreme of studying frequencies and etc., then those mantras, those vibrations, those words of power might actually include the right wavelength if done in the right pitch and the right length and pronunciation of speech. I am, so, etc., to create the necessary wavelength to stimulate that portion of the body and or portion of the mind and create the desired effects. These also include crystals on this particular chart. Now again, we don't want to go too esoteric, but there is also some truth. Some truth. There's a lot of hubris, creativity, fanaticism when it comes to crystals. But there are some that are legitimate. Like there are some that literally you squeeze them and produce a small electric discharge. And these ones are generally going to cost you more. There are a lot of stones that do have specific frequencies that will aid a person or plants and other things around it to a point. But one, it's not going to be this tiny little thing. Much like our speaker producing a greater amplitude and therefore stronger volume and people and things that it can affect and that wave being stronger, having a tiny little flake of something obviously isn't going to produce as great a result as a big obelisk, say. So for the most part, crystal therapy is overrated and exaggerated. But there is a little bit of truth in there. There are stones that will help people, and there are some that legitimately, for example, you can not only create small amounts of electricity with some of them, but lead shielding from radiation, for example. So there is a little bit of knowledge to be had there, but I don't buy into the overhype of non-scientific magic. This shows the relation into food, sound therapy. Look, frequency, boom. See, they covered it. 256 hertz. And now you can also look into your own time, solfeggio frequencies and all these other kind of people who and systems that have looked into, can we divide the person into basically 7 modalities of consciousness, and can colors and sounds and stuff affect them and make it easier accessible to them? The only problem with this is if we're all using the same system, is the more that people know the system, the more people are using these systems against you. And it is true. Color therapy in movies includes using brighter hues, reds and oranges and yellows and especially autumn times, to make the user feel warm and welcome and love story right along with them. And you can tell it's like wearing yellow hippie shades or whatever. If you've ever wore like a really bright pair of shades that change the tint of everything and make everything look really more sunny and bright, that's exactly what you're doing every time you watch one of these romance Hollywood movies, because they're using the knowledge. Similarly, in horror movies, you get to see the blues, the whitish, almost lightning cloud grays, You know, it's that very dull thing, so that it can dull your mind down to perception a little bit, while using the gamma waves then to spike it back up and put you in anxiety. So you're kind of already disoriented without knowing it, to a percentage from the very beginning. So they use all that stuff. Star Trek, for example, if you look at the major chakra tones, so called, you can compare them to the sounds being played on the ship in Star Trek, and you'll find that if you play them all at the same time, you're getting the classic ship hum. Dun dun dun. So we've covered most of this stuff. That's excellent. So now, and we did it all in a half hour. Spot on. This chart I'll be sure to include a link, but now here's the fun part. So we know that sounds can manipulate us and or others. One of these on this jokes to say, play in a crowded room. Calms down anxiousness or something, and dare somebody to try it. I like that, encouraging mad scientists, by going out there and soothing chaos for a little bit using a tone. ELFs, electronic low frequencies. Yeah, you can put someone to sleep with a sound, or at least lull them down. We got a lot of wired people these days. You can amp someone up with a sound. You can release serotonin. You can release dopamine. It's pretty incredible, really. You can use this, and caution, I guess, should be taken. I ain't taken enough, probably, right? Experimenting on yourself. But in knowing this, it ain't like the charts and the information aren't available. So be educated. But, if you're tapping into one part of the brain and then 15 minutes later, you hit this other area, you're hitting these chemicals. You're pumping these frequencies through your mind. So if you end up rewiring yourself, now I'm already autism, so when I took an interest in this research over 15 years ago, it was mostly like, oh wow, there's like a brain system. There's the buttons and dials and radars we can play with, and it helped me a lot, actually, especially as someone who rarely sleeps. Now, if I don't sleep, I can still get the majority of the recovery of it, because I know there's a wave for that, there's a posture for that, there's a direction to stretch my eye muscles up, by the way, for that. Looking up for 30 minutes can replace up to 4 hours of sleep. Can. You should still sleep on occasion. Now, I want to point out a couple of fun frequencies that are on this chart to really get you guys excited to play around this technology at home. Don't forget, you can get your own tone generator or frequency generator. There's plenty on the App Store. I would recommend one, but I don't remember the name of the company. I just use the app all the time without thinking about it, so I'll come back with some links. But you can experiment. How many and what percentage towards the left or the right speaker do you want a certain sound? One of the ones I use literally lets you see the waves on screen, so you know where the interference patterns are. So if I'm playing 5 tones at once, I can see if the waves collide or not. And when the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they can cancel each other out. I want them to blend like a fiber mesh net, you know what I mean? Alright, so we're going to point out a couple interesting things on this. The pyramid frequency. Now, that's way too much to go into for right now. That's some complicated shit. But I'll play one near it. Check this out. 33. Bam. Christ consciousness. What? There's a frequency for Christ consciousness? That's right. Okay, now notice just by 1 point. This is how incredible the brain is. You got to think like in the terms of the hundreds places when playing with some of this stuff. So the more specific and better your equipment is, the better. Just being able to have an entire hertz, that's a whole hertz. Remember, we started with 0.5 of an increment when I showed you the main states. So, pituitary stimulation, release of growth hormone. What? We can get rid of some of those extra drugs? Just remember, whatever you're using up in your brain, you got to replenish and recharge. So, the real shamans are going to be eating the right plants and the right things to make up for the things that they're using. They know their systems. But 32 and 33 I really wanted to cover. 33 hertz. 33 vertebrae in the spine. 33 degrees in Freemasonry. When you're 33, when you turn 33, you're supposed to go through an ascension process if you're ready for it, and hopefully you are. So, Christ consciousness, hypersensitivity, that would make sense, right? Some kind of godlike character, so aware, hypersensitivity. The pyramid frequency, if you were to measure these rooms that are built with very specific heights in the walls, very specific widths, very specific lengths, by very specific Freemasons or builders, if you will, turns out one of these rooms is 33 hertz. And it inspired a lot of people to think about this stuff. Schumann resonance is like a frequency of the earth. You can look into that later. Lines up with Christ consciousness and the pyramid frequency. And you can combine it with other tones for weird effects, and it's true. If you want to play around without like the dangers of acid, but I mean, I suppose it's all the same danger if you're playing around with where your mind can go. You can use this super sensitive frequency and combine it with other areas of the brain and kind of go weird ways. Imagine if you're like a rubber band, you know, that can kind of stretch this way and that. If you could connect little areas you're not used to connecting. Just keep in mind, much like the grimoires of summoning spirits, the more that you do something, in this case it's your brain, you know, if the more you travel a neural pathway, the stronger, the wider that tube, that connection becomes. So if it's not good for you or you're not having good results, obviously don't continue that. Because it's going to be, the brain doesn't do what's smart, it does what's familiar. It's going to travel that familiar route. 33 is hypersensitivity and 32 is desensitization. So say you're like me and you're super anxious like almost all the fucking time. 32 hertz will help. You can also get a free app called Strobily on Android, Strobily, and if you have a good camera with like a LED for flash, it will it literally allow you to select hundreds of settings, how to use the strobe to your advantage. You can make it pulse to your music and detect with the microphone. You can go by a BPM, or you can put in a hertz, and that will allow you to use light therapy basically. Just don't screw your eyes up. So put it behind a wall or behind a thing so it illuminates a wall instead of hitting you directly in the face. But those pulses of light can be used to trigger different states of consciousness. In fact, some of the early strobe machines, I wish I could remember the name of the movie. There was a movie where they were studying demons, basically, or people who believed in demons, like people who thought they were possessed and schizophrenics and such. And they found that not only was the phenomena real, so to speak, the items moving allegedly by themselves, like unseen forces, you can see items move. Turns out those things were happening, but that it was triggered by the patient's brain. And in order to trigger them through in and out of different states of consciousness, they made like this homemade strobe light thing. It was basically a lamp with a motor attached to it, and the lamp shade covers the whole lamp and has holes drilled into it. So if you change the speed of the motor running the shade around the lamp, it would change how fast the light would pour through a hole, therefore creating a flicker at different rates. I've read exercises saying stare at the sun and do this. Never worked for me. And if you did it at the right speed, the light flicker would mess with you. But that's a very real thing. It's called flicker vertigo. Okay, helicopter pilots crash and experience this kind of stuff all the time. The sun comes through the blades of the helicopter, and the speed of the blades caused the flickering of the light. Same thing through the trees, or the people driving down the street when it passes through the leaves, through the trees. And driving at certain speeds, they get this flicker effect that distorts the state of consciousness, putting them into an altered state. And that disorientation and altered state can cause them to crash and or die. So these are real technologies. Now we can use this to our advantage though. Endorphins, for example, that geeky state you get when you go without sleep. You know, after you don't go to sleep and then you stay up so long and everything becomes a little funnier and a little more fun than it's supposed to be. Those are endorphins. Turns out you can help yourself release those. People that are chronically not getting the help for like chronic pain and stuff like that, not getting the help that they need, can use some of these technologies, and it greatly does aid a person. For the people that haven't allowed help in their lives, I've often kind of snuck in that help. I could put these in the background of a CD I burned somebody at a very low an inaudible or near inaudible volume. They're listening to music that's some of their favorite songs and have no idea that they're getting therapy. You know, they're always anxious. Maybe I sneak in some alpha or some theta waves in there, and then boom. And you can look forward, my friends. I'm going to release some meditation tracks I made years ago. So if you're looking to, if you have a hard time with visualization, I got you covered. Got 2 tracks there for that. If you need to wind yourself down, and I'm going to be making a CD to sell later, but I'm going to put out a lot of stuff where you can do this stuff for free anyway. But basically meditation music key programmed into certain points with a lot of these frequencies. So say you don't want to spend the time researching and playing around and learning this stuff for 15 years. I got you covered. But if you're a nerd like me, it might be pretty interesting to you. And it might be interesting to see why and certain connections between like spiritual minds and the actual science that may have inspired some of those ideas. Like they got this, look. Stimulating 5-hydroxytryptamine production with 80 hertz, used for rapid relief from headaches, used on sinus infections and head colds. Crazy, right? So that's just one of a million tools that I'm going to be teaching you guys, but I thought we'd try to simplify it a little bit. Now you can go play with your own brainwave therapy. To sum up a bit, you know, monaural means one speaker, one tone. Binaural means 2. You're going to need headphones. Splitting the tone in between the 2, it creates one dominant blend frequency, and your brain understands it. Your brain adapts to things over time, so exposing yourself for several minutes to something, whether you like or something or not. Like stress. You don't like stress, don't you? Do you? But yet you attune to it so quickly. So maybe there's something to this being able to help you. I'll include a couple more here near the end. Pinching certain nerves. I had that chart with the hands. One of the things I wanted to mention was just like there were 5 main states, and just like there are 5 main elements to the Wiccan or whatever, you know, there are main nerves you can pinch and stimulate. Even if pinching the nerve didn't do anything by itself, like say you want to be skeptic as far as that, you can know that psychologically you're creating an anchor. What is an anchor? An anchor is when 2 things are embedded together within the subconscious. So like if you remember Bearded Kevin, that's how you remember him. You anchored the beard part to it, and the 2 became kind of transposed. If I'm making a girl laugh on a first date and I wiggle the fingers on my right hand when she laughs for the first time, and don't really mention anything of it, the subconscious mind recorded the entire event. It anchored the wiggling of the fingers on my right hand to laughter invocation. So in the future, I can manipulate and stimulate that person's mood just a little bit more by wiggling the fingers in the attempt. And it's going to bring her back to the early place where we were friends, where we were loving. That's an anchor, okay? So the pinching your fingers and doing mudras, hand positions, right, means you're also creating anchors. If you're taught, for example, that this stimulates wisdom and memory, okay, that stimulates wisdom and memory. If this finger is mind or the element of air, then just simply that means that to me means every time I'm doing this, I'm thinking in a way that's associated with my ideas of air, with my ideas of mind, with my ideas of sanity and stability, etc., and so on. So if all of that is in my subconscious, let alone the focus of where I am right now, if I got used to doing that, every single one of those rehearsed thoughts anchored to that notion are going to come up with it. I use it for wisdom and memory. If I'm forgetting something, fuck, what would I say? Oh! And so that helps for me. Anchoring. So now you know you can use your body in that. Different postures. You might wonder why I walk like an Egyptian. There's reasons for all of that stuff. So we've covered a little bit on hand gestures and on frequencies. And now you can go get your own little programs. You got your links to the charts if you're interested in this kind of stuff, or you can look forward to some downloadable tracks that you can meditate or dream to, or whatever your particular area of need. You can send in some suggestions if I don't have a wide enough range of what you want to tackle when I upload these things. I'm Kevin Cass. I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about this. You can use this to master yourself a little bit better. I think it's crazy we basically have technology to cheat our consciousness these days. You can get used to, like I'm used to functioning on extremely low sleep, and one of the ways I survived it was learning about this kind of stuff years ago. Now I can speed up and slow myself down pretty well at will. And that's pretty much the goal. Before the technology, before we had ways to speed this up, to introduce ourselves to that state faster, going in and out of trance, going in and out of this place faster, so that we know what it is. Before we had this kind of technology, the regular person would have had to meditate 40 years, say, and to get there enough times to know what that place is, what that place means, how I operate, how I think, how I chemically excrete, etc. there. Now we can kind of expedite the process. We can go, me, 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 and your brain's like, okay, I'm used to that, me, me. I remember doing that before. We were hardcore studying. We were hyper-focused. We were in high beta frequency, studying for that exam. And kind of go there again 10 times faster, even without being a master. But the goal should be, as you play around with this technology, you get used to how it feels to crank up, crank down, etc. Pay attention to yourself, and then be able to replicate it later on, because now you know that neuro pathway. Whereas the old you was just triggered by everyone else with the lights and the frequencies and the colors and the words of command and stuff while you were subconsciously asleep, hypnotized more than you knew the whole time. Anyway, have a good night, folks. Much love to you all. I'm Kevin Chaos, kevinsportal.com, youtube.com/c/Kevin, LALIBERTE.